Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September 22 meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. My name is Matt Busick, and I'm the president. We have several guests to welcome today, and I'd like each of you to stand as I mention your name. First, past President Dick Reasons, please stand and say hello to everyone. Good to have you back, Dick. Haley Becker from the American Heart Association is here as a guest of Carter Smith today. Kaylee, you need to stand and say hello. Thank you. Two guests with David Ullman today. Nick Heffman is a recent ISU grad. We won't hold that against you, Nick. And with CBS News. Doug Burns from Carroll Times Herald. Did I lose the? Oh, there we go. From Carroll, currently publisher of the Carroll Times Herald, and writer with Des Moines City View. Dennis Dykstra is here. Okay, hold your applause until the end. No, applaud all you want. We want to make it as welcoming to our guests as possible. Hopefully this works for you, Deidre. Okay, Dennis Dykstra is a guest of Denise Essman. Brad Schabel is a guest of and spouse of Claudia Schabel. Gretchen Beckley, a guest of Steve and spouse of Steve. Welcome, Gretchen. Mason Powers is with us from Bankers Trust and a guest of Becky Greenwald. And last but certainly not least, Victoria Moon is here as a deputy director of the DeGier campaign and a guest of the club. Okay, Kitty and Becky just returned from the large Rotary Club conference in San Jose, California. And when they were there, they learned from our friends at the Milwaukee Rotary Club about a fallen hero ride that's being undertaken by one of Milwaukee's Rotarians. He happens to be a retired colonel and is moving across the United States, 1,700 miles in all, to honor to visit the graves of 6 paratroopers who served in his unit and were killed in action in Afghanistan. His objective is to raise awareness of the tremendous sacrifices our fellow citizens who serve in our armed forces make, and to raise funds for veteran services generally. If you'd like to learn more about this fundraising initiative, there is a brochure, flyer out at the front table. Please take a look, and if you care to donate, Kitty can help you figure out how to do that. But we definitely want to support that initiative if we can. Okay, so now on to the show. We have a very special. What?
He's coming through Des Moines.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll be here next Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll be in Des Moines if you were so inclined to want to actually meet him. So that's the colonel. Okay, Bob Bedroll has volunteered to provide a moment of inspiration today. We need more of you to sign up for this important part of our weekly meeting. You can do that either in the lobby or online. Bob will also lead us in reciting the pledge and throwaway test. After Bob, of course, you know, we'll greet those around you. And last, Jackie Norris will introduce our guest today. We have a very special guest. So, Bob, if you could please stand.
Thank you, President Matt. On Friday evenings, one of the things I like to do is watch the PBS NewsHour. And, always liked when they had Shields and Brooks. Now it's Capehart and Brooks. And this is a quote from the late Mark Shields. I learned from my mom and dad, my family, that every one of us has been warmed by fires we did not build. And every one of us is drunk from wells we did not dig. And together we can't do less for those who come after us. And together we can do so much more. Now to pledge allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Now greet your fellow Rotarians.
I heard you on the radio when I was walking. You were talking about David So I think Cindy was talking about this last night. She did some on Facebook.
All right, team, why don't you have a seat? David Omen, I'm calling you out. Let's go. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Jackie Norris, and I just have to say I haven't been here for a while, and it's really good to be here. And you know, post-COVID, I think it just feels really good to see a lot of familiar faces, to be able to catch up. Yet another reason why we all have to work harder to pull members back. So it's great to see all of your wonderful faces. I have the pleasure of introducing Deidre DeGier today. She is a small business owner who founded her firm almost 15 years ago to directly support the work of small businesses. Over the course of her career, Deidre has worked with over 1,000 businesses on developing growth strategy, marketing plans, and business planning. She's originally from Mississippi, then Oklahoma, and she came to Iowa to attend Drake University and never left the state that she fell in love with. She now calls this home. While still a student, Deidre co-founded the nonprofit Back to School Iowa to support youth to continue in their educational endeavors. As a voting rights champion and community leader, Deidre previously ran for Secretary of State in Iowa in 2018, when she became the first Black woman to earn the Democratic nomination in a statewide race in Iowa. Now, before Deidre comes up, I want to ask all of you to look at Deidre through the lens of gratitude. We are so lucky to have people on both sides of the aisle willing to run for office these days. Sadly, politics right now is personal, it's petty, and it's a combat sport. And many people have chosen not to run for office. So let's be sure we extend deep gratitude to all of our candidates. Deidre is kicking off our series for having the fortitude to be here, for having the fortitude to run for governor, and for having the desire to make this state a better place to live, work, and play. So, and also Deidre is a good friend of mine, I want to say that too. So come on up, Deidre, we're so glad to have you.
Hello. It is so good to be amongst you all. You know, Jackie calls me a good friend, and I'll take that, but more so than anything, she's like a political auntie to me. She tells me what to do all the time. So when she told me that I needed to be here, I knew that I needed to be here. And it is a pleasure to see some familiar faces. It's a pleasure to see some new faces. And I have the extraordinary opportunity in these moments to be running to be Iowa's next governor. This is a state that means a great deal to me. In fact, as I was coming in today, I'm going to call Victoria out. She's my deputy. She was having a little trouble parking downstairs. And I was putting on my makeup thinking, I'll just let her get this figured out. I'm not going to say anything and I'll have a little bit more time to put on this makeup. But the reason why that moment was so nostalgic to me is because I started in this building in 2006 as an intern at Bankers Trust. And I remember the first day that I came, I could not figure out how to park downtown. and I walked into this group in the boardroom downstairs of other interns that were probably there 20 minutes in advance, and I was late. And Renee Hardman, if you all know her, called me out and asked, why are you late? And I had to answer to that. But needless to say, that was the start of my career in this great state. I had the opportunity to intern as a young college student at Bankers Trust in the marketing department. Got to meet women of achievement like Judy McCoy Davis. I had opportunities to not only work in this building, but this building also inspired me to start a small business. It was at the time in which I was working at Bankers Trust. It was around the brink of the recession. Folks were getting laid off from their jobs and didn't have a choice but to become entrepreneurs. And I was this young college student. I knew everything under the sun, and I thought I might as well help these business owners. And I did. And from that point on, I've just been committed to helping problem solve however I could. And the most significant part about my story, though, folks, is that I had a pathway. I had a pathway to learn. I had a pathway to dream. And I also had a pathway to implement those dreams. And as we're looking at our society right now, including in our state, those pathways are getting smaller and smaller for too many people. Rural, urban, suburban, crossing all types of demographics. I mean, as Iowans, we're hard-working people. But right now, it's real hard. And there are some things that can happen at the state level that can really make sure that everybody has that pathway. But it takes the fortitude and leadership to make sure that that happens. And that's what I want to see happen in this state. I'm of the mindset that Iowans know what's good for us. One might look on this state at our set of challenges that we have to overcome and think, man, Iowans, they must not know what's happening. They must not have any solutions. Oh, we've got solutions. Big and small challenges, Iowans have solutions. The challenge is that we don't have leadership willing to turn the lights on for us. We know what's good. When we look at the issue of education, probably something that's important to each and every one of us in this room, because as I've been traveling, it's important to everybody, rural, urban, suburban, black, white, Latino, refugee, no matter who I talk to. Education is at the top of the list in the issue. Why? Because this is something that we've been good at. This is something that we take a great deal of pride in as Iowans. We were once number one in this state. Now we're falling farther and farther down the list, and as Iowans, we know that that is not where we belong. But we're also willing to do something about it as Iowans as well. When we look at our history and what education meant to us, it's not just in recent years. It's not just because of the Iowa Basic Skills Test. Nearly 100 years before Brown versus Board of Education, that famous desegregation case, our state, when we were probably 99.9% white, made a decision to desegregate our schools. And we did that on the account of a little black girl in Muscatine County, rural Iowa. Her father was an attorney and was trying to educate her and realized if she was going to stand a chance, she needed access to a public education system. That wasn't legal. But Iowa made a decision at that point in time, and you better believe it was unpopular, that no matter your race, no matter your gender, no matter where you live, each and every one of our students across the state should have access to a strong, quality public education system. We made that decision early on. And now as we see it, we're falling flat on our duty to give that to our students. More than 90% of our students are enrolled in public schools in this state. And when we had an opportunity to invest in our schools and to meet our districts where they were to perform for the good of our students and their families, our governor decided maybe $55 million of taxpayer money going to fund the private tuition of private schools is going to be the thing that we should do about that. We knew that that wasn't a solution. More than 100% of our students need our undivided attention. So this is an election cycle where we have an opportunity to do something about that, because I'm committed. I'm committed to making sure that our students have access to a limitless future. Education is the cornerstone of so many challenges that we're dealing with right now. And we have an opportunity to truly do something about it. Each and every 3- and 4-year-old across this state should have access to at least 30 hours of early childhood education. As I'm talking to our kindergarten teachers, our young ones are coming in less and less prepared. We're going to do something about that because we know how to do something about this. But what I'm talking about is not new to Iowa. We've had the blueprint. We just have to make sure that that blueprint is relative to the needs of our society and our state today. Now, I talk about education being incredibly important to me, but I also want to make sure that the Iowan is healthy and whole, from the crown of their head to the sole of their feet. Our healthcare and our mental health care system has to meet the needs of Iowans, folks. Our rural Iowans are struggling. They're driving 45, 60 miles to seek care. Mamas are having babies in cars because they can't access an OBGYN clinic. We have to interrupt that, and there's something we can do about it. In urban Iowa, folks live right next door to the hospital and can't get the care that they need. Unfortunately, what we've seen in politics on both the Democratic and the Republican side is that politicians will create policies that are going to best impact this table right here. And then they go out and they tell the media, look at what we did for this table over here. They brag about it and they lift it up. Meanwhile, the rest of the folks are saying, what about me? This was live and in color in rural Iowa just a few weeks ago. Just a few weeks ago, I had a roundtable discussion, and 2 women in that roundtable discussion said, our healthcare system is not meeting our needs. I've got to drive 75 miles to go to a doctor's appointment. That's too much. I'm too elderly. I've got glaucoma. I shouldn't be driving. It was a real challenge for her. On the other side of the room, a woman said, wait a minute. I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to speak highly of our healthcare system because it saved my husband's life and it saved my life. Both of those stories can be true. But it is incumbent upon government to make sure that the person that is getting the least amount of services, that has the least pathway, that has the most resistance, also gets access to a pathway where they get access to care. That is incredibly important. I want to go the extra mile for Iowans. I'm unfortunately no longer subscribing to this idea that you've got to rob Peter to pay Paul. You've got to do the work to make sure Paul is good, Peter is good, and Paula. And mind you, that's not easy, because if it were easy, it'd be done right now. It'd be done. And it's not going to be done on the backs of Democrats alone. It's not going to be done on the backs of Republicans alone. No matter where I go, the issues that we're talking about, folks, are crossing party barriers. This election cycle is going to be about the I behind our name, and that's Iowa. That's Iowans. That's about us. And unfortunately, as we see it, our leadership is not currently seeing the challenges that we're dealing with and willing to do something about them. I want to do something about them. Mental health care is important to everybody. We know the number that COVID just dealt on us over the last 2 years. And it is a point of strength, even though it is a sensitive and vulnerable topic to talk about. It is a point of strength to talk about it. And I was fortunate enough when I was in Dubuque at the very start of this campaign to hear a story from a father that I often tell to a lot of folks to really encompass what our systems are doing and how they're not meeting the needs of people. His son called him in the middle of the day, was 17 years old, and he said, Dad, I'm thinking about harming myself. Something no father wants to have to hear, but he did what any good father would do, and he hopped in that car, got to his kid, and took him to the emergency room. Mind you, this is an insured father. It's a full-time job with benefits, but the emergency room is the only place that he can take him. Once he gets him in that emergency room, doctor analyzes him and says, all right, we see there are some challenges with your son, but unfortunately we can't get him in to see a psychiatrist for another 6 months. Absolutely unreasonable, but there's a reason for it. We have less than 30 child psychiatrists in this state with more than 500,000 kids. The next best thing that doctor offered that child, mind you, they're in Dubuque, he said there's a free bed in Sioux City. Unreasonable. The most vulnerable time of this child's life, the pathway for him to access help is 5.5, 6 hours away from his home. Unreasonable, but there's a reason for it. We have less than 600 mental health beds in this state for a population of more than 3 million people. The last best thing that doctor could offer him was to see a psychologist in 2 months. We are 45th in the nation in mental health care worker availability. We are perpetuating a crisis right now. And it's not just amongst our youth. It's amongst working adults. It's amongst Iowans. As I'm in our counties across the state, especially our rural counties, our county jails are becoming mental health care holding facilities, folks. And law enforcement's raising their hand saying, you're trying to turn us into a quasi-mental health care practitioner, and that's not what we signed up for. Our county hospitals are not equipped to handle this, and they're becoming holding facilities for people. We've got to address this crisis head on, but there are some systemic barriers that exist. When we decided to regionalize the system under this current leadership and our predecessor, the idea was that private industry was going to come in and fit the bill and do the work because there was an obvious need, there was a demand. But we're not paying the dollars so that private industry can make their business model work in this state. There are some things that we can overcome to handle the challenges that are ahead of us. But I'm emboldened in this election cycle because I know about the people who have become before us. You know, when we talk about Susan Clark getting access to a strong quality education system, it's not just about Susan anymore. It's about all our kids. I can stand here rightfully and know that we can overcome these challenges because I know what Iowans are capable of. And I know what we've been able to accomplish, even when it has been unpopular. When I say I know Iowans know what's good for Iowa, I believe that with every part of my being. But I want to be your governor in such a way that we're doing the hardest work for all of us. This has been a part of my life. I've never had the opportunity to choose who I would and would not work with and who I would and would not work for in order to accomplish a goal. That is the nature of democracy. The last thing that I'll say, no matter where I go, Iowans just want to be able to talk to their neighbors again. They just want to be able to have a strong civil conversation and walk away as friends. And that should be okay, because that's always been a part of who we are. This idea that we are on one extreme or the next is not a part of our nature in this state. And so we're going to restore some balance by making people feel welcome, but more importantly, seeing the people. You know, our state constitution says that in the political power section, all political power is inherent in the people. No matter how hard we may think this election cycle is going to be, we've done harder things, good people. And the political power is in our hands, so we might as well just win it for all of us, okay? I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. Any questions about anything? You can ask me what I ate for breakfast.
I'll start, and then hopefully other people ask. So, can you tell us a story of somebody you met on the campaign trail and how that might have informed your thinking about a particular policy?
So I'll go back to that doctor or that father with that mental health care story. That story really opened my eyes because when I'm looking at our populations, my vision is always flocking to the most vulnerable amongst us, seeing what challenges people are experiencing. When he told me his story about his mental health care experience with his son, I realized that the issues weren't just about the most vulnerable amongst us, because he's doing everything that he can and doing all the right things to, provide for his family and paying insurance, only to be turned away. And so when I tell that story across the state, in fact, I told it 3 weeks ago with a mother privately. She had been trying to seek mental health care for her young girls. And she had 3 of them. And she had been trying for about 6 to 8 months. And she thought as a mother, something was wrong with her, that she was not doing everything she could to deliver what her girls deserved. And it wasn't until I told her that story that she realized, oh, it's not my fault. Oh, I'm not alone. And it was like a burden lifted off of her, and she got fired up and wanted to go tell other people as well. And so what I'm coming to terms with along this trail is that too many Iowans think they're alone. As I said, the last 2 years, it was hard. There was so much uncertainty. Everybody put up their walls. There was a great deal of folks just not wanting to interact because of fear. We experienced loss. And now, as we're coming back together, I think we're starting to figure it out again. But we're also coming with a lot of burden. We're coming with a lot of baggage, and we're unclear if it's our fault. And right now, we have leadership who is literally starving our systems, expecting that they do more with less. And we're taking the responsibility as Iowans because that's what we've always done, and we've worked hard, and we've said we're just going to go overcome regardless. But no, it should not be this hard. It should not be this difficult. It should not be this challenging. I am seeing so many tears across our state. Our rural communities, folks, they've been making do, and they've been so resilient. They don't have the safety nets we have in Polk County. Right? When Des Moines Public Schools is dealing with challenges, we see corporations and nonprofits flock and say, how can we help? What can we do? Right? But our rural communities don't have that luxury. And we have to make sure, as we're taking pride in talking about in Iowa, the fact that we're in Polk County, that we can live, work, and play in our community, all 99 counties deserve that as well. So that's what a takeaway. We got to make sure people aren't alone. Back, please.
I'm so distressed about the whole mental health issue.
Yeah.
change that, what can you do?
Right.
And
Those.
there are thousands of people like you and me that are.
Yeah. So one, we have to increase, we have to increase our reimbursement rates in the state to make the business model work for folks to come in and actually provide this service. We can't expect that people are going to provide this service for free. And it's not just on mental health care where we have to do our due diligence and increase in the reimbursement rates. Mind you, we don't need private industry to take advantage of the costs and things along those lines, but the reimbursement rates just don't make the business model work. The other part of it is that we have to increase access for folks to get the licenses that they need in this state, and not only in this state, for folks around the state of Iowa, so that we can have some bit of reciprocity amongst other states, so that to make it a little bit easier for folks to transition here and do the work. But the other part of it is that we also have to pay people on time as a state. You know, as I'm talking to many of our providers, they're getting paid 120, too many days past due. And it's hard to run a business that way. The other part of it, when I talk about education, we need to get people into the workforce. And so while we're investing in K through 12, we also have to invest in our community colleges and our regions as well. There was a point in time in which we funded our regions 3/4 of their budget. Now it's 1/4. Well, we know the cost of business has gone up, and that cost, unfortunately, is going to the parent and our students that are enrolled in these universities. And so if we expect to fill the workforce here, along with the other 81,000 jobs that we need to fill in this state, we have to make education more accessible, not just for the traditional student, but the untraditional student as well.
You talk about civility.
And I'm not repeating the questions, I'm sorry. I'm gonna repeat Bob's question.
Talk about bringing back civility within our state, hopefully our nation someday, because there is a great divide and seems to be getting wider. What steps would you take as governor to make that happen?
So, civility comes in tone and how we talk about people. But civility can also be seen in action. And we have a number of boards and commissions that exist throughout our state that are purposeful in their individual missions. One of the things that I would like to see is that those boards in their missions have people who represent the communities that are impacted by the work that they're doing, whether they be lived experiences or professional experiences. A part of being welcoming is welcoming the vision of other people. I have a vision of what I think success looks like, but my vision is incomplete without you all's. And so I'd like to see us be more inclusive in how we get people engaged in government. I would also like to see our policies really, as I talked about earlier, going the extra mile to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and mitigating as many unintended consequences as possible. You're never going to be perfect, but I want us to work towards that. And the other part of it is I want to embolden both Republicans and Democrats. One might say, especially people from my party, you can't work with Republicans. Well, I have a great deal of faith in all people. What I started this campaign and doing was seeking the good in everybody. And there's been some glimmers of hope on the other side. When we talk about the issue of education, when our current governor wanted to give $55 million of your taxpayer money to fund 2% of our students' private tuition, there were 28 Republicans that said no. And about 10 of them were up for re-election. And only one of them got re-elected. And I called those folks who didn't get re-elected and I said, why did you do this? You had to have known you were putting a target on your back. You had to have known that this was going to be a tough situation for you. And they said very poignantly, she's gone too far. This was not good for my community. When I say Iowans know what's good for Iowa, I mean Republicans and Democrats alike, independents alike. And we're going to create that atmosphere where it's not just about folks reaching across the aisle. I'm going to be in the middle doing the hardest work I can to bring people to the middle, because that's how we have the sustainable change. If we think about everything that's happened over these last 2 years, we remember at the beginning of COVID when all of us were on our knees looking around. We weren't looking for people to help us based on party. We were looking for people to help us based on being in Iowa. And we had to sit in rooms with people we would normally not sit in and sit with in order to resolve conflict. We are capable. We know we're capable. You know, this is the home of Governor Ray. Character counts in this state. It means something every day out of the week. And anybody who stands in the way of that, we're just going to hop on over and keep going. Because we have to, especially for our babies. We do. Thank you. And I didn't repeat his question. I'm so sorry. He asked about civility, you all.
Deidre, I'm concerned that one of the greatest economic development and public health concerns facing our state is our water quality. And we tend to hear that that's somehow being taken care of when everything points to it not. What are your ideas to address that issue?
We've got to bring all the parties in the same room to resolve this. So prior to this campaign, I was adjacent to the water quality issue, knowing it was important for us to accomplish, but not understanding all of the parts of it. And, you know, there was this preconceived notion when I'd be in urban Iowa that I'd hear, rural Iowa doesn't want clean water, farmers don't want clean water. And when I'd be in rural Iowa, these urban folks keep telling us what to do, they don't know what they're talking about, right? And so that was all that I knew. And as I've been talking to Iowans about this issue, they bring it up, rural, urban, suburban, everybody wants clean water. It's just a matter of how we make it happen. And unfortunately, we don't have tables where we've got farmers, landowners, the educators, you know, the activists in the same room trying to figure out how we make this happen. But here's the other part. We also have to prioritize this issue with our resources. Take example, the DNR. We had 20 park rangers at the beginning of this year scattered throughout the state, and there was a challenge because their homes needed about $1 million in improvements collectively. And rather than find the $1 million to improve their homes, the decision of this current administration during the housing crisis was to evict those park rangers from their homes. And about shortly thereafter, there was one of our parks in the state of Iowa, northeastern Iowa, who had a fire on site. And typically the park ranger would be able to go in and help take care of that. But we know in some of our spots in rural communities, we don't get the best cell phone service. No one could call emergency services that was involved in that fire. So it took an individual leaving that park, going to get the fire department, and then bringing him back there. You know, that's a point where we make a decision on whether or not we believe our parks, our water, our environment is important to us. Not just in how we communicate, but also in how we invest. You know, the Biden administration, along with Congresswoman Axing, is working feverishly to get resources into this state, and we see the climate action policies that are coming out of that. We need to make sure that we have leadership in the state who has a concerted effort of putting those resources to work for Iowans. We've got to do that. The lane is there, right? It is no longer impossible for us to conquer this task. We can do it. The other part of it, when we talk about agriculture, you know, there's a great deal of a blueprint as it relates to scalable ag. Well, there's a lot of these up and coming young farmers who want to just farm 10 acres and they want to just be able to make ends meet there. We need a smaller blueprint that the state is producing. We're not dependent upon the USDA for everything agriculture. We have to have a vision in this state. While we pride ourselves in feeding the world and fueling this country, we should also be able to pride ourselves in the state of Iowa in leading in environmental sustainability because we've done it before. Great question. Hal Chase.
Deidre, do you have any plans, specific plans to try and move Iowa from consistently being in the top 10, disproportionately incarcerating African Americans to their percentage?
Absolutely. I mean, it's when I talk about our policies being encompassing, we know very much so that the African American community disproportionately is impacted by incarceration, but that is also linked with economy and economics as well. In our county right now, African American households make half the amount of money as all Polk County households. It's about $37,000, $38,000 compared to about $67,000, $68,000. So we cannot resolve the challenges with the criminal justice system if we do not resolve the issues that folks are dealing with when they're out and about living their everyday lives. You know, we consistently see disparities as it relates to education as well. If we do not fundamentally shift the trajectory of our education system, we are going to continue to send folks to prison. We know what it means when people are looking at our third grade reading scores. We know what that's associated with. And when I talk about our kindergarten teachers telling me that our kindergartners are coming in less and less prepared, you know that's impacting third grade as well. So we've got to give our students a chance of being good at the fundamentals. It is by no mistake that we're home of the Iowa Basic Skills Test. We've gotten the basics right. Have we been perfect? No. But we're still the Petrie District progress. And so we've got to fix these other outlying things, because many of you all know my husband and I did a great deal of work at Evelyn K. Davis Center for Working Families. It wasn't enough for someone to be released from prison if they did not have a pathway to success once they got out. Otherwise, recidivism was just going to be a cycle for them. So we've got to clean up out here and clean up on the inside. And we're going to do both.
So I take it your comments relative to public and private education, that you think the issue is with public education is a lack of financial resources. So is it your position that the problem is it teacher pay, is it facilities, is it curriculum, is it parents? What is the reason that you think we've fallen behind?
I will say the foremost reason is that we have shied away from prioritizing education in the state. It used to be we prioritize education as the first thing we would allocate resources to, almost paying our tithe to our students in such a way. And we'd see 5% increases. Under this current leadership, over the last 4 years, we've seen a 1.9% increase on average. And so there are a number of challenges right now, and I can't pinpoint one. Teacher pay is one, especially starting teacher pay, because there are districts throughout this state that are paying nice wages. But when we look at starting teacher pay, $35,000 a year, teachers can go and do other things, or they can go to other states and start at $45,000, $50,000 a year. We also see challenges with class sizes right now because of lack of folks in the industry. We're seeing lack of opportunity to get kids to and from school because we're short on bus drivers, we're short on mental health care practitioners. We're literally starving the system, asking it to perform. I'm a former basketball coach at Des Moines East High School and worked a great deal with our teachers. And I liken it to this analogy. We were able in 2012 to win the state championship, went 26-0. Yes, that is a shameless shout out, and you can clap to that. But here's the part of it. Well, it would be silly for me to ask my girls on a Friday night to go win a game if I didn't give them food or water the whole day. We can't expect our systems to perform right now if we're not even willing to invest in them. So some might say, look, they're not doing what they're doing, we just need to pull the money out and figure out something else. Well, of course they're not going to do what we need them to do without the resources for them to perform. And there's no district that looks the same. There's no district that has the exact same challenges that are going on. Maybe there's some similarities that exist. But it's important for the educators in the field to also have a voice as well. And when we gutted collective bargaining, we took the educator's voice away from the conversation and started focusing more on the system and less on fundamentally how do we make the system work for our kids and the people who are in it.
Yes, I have just an observation. We hear about the program. I don't think that anyone would doubt that there are areas which need better financial support. On the other hand, these days we're living in down markets, record high inflation, and those things. And I think that it's impossible for any voter to consider any issue without something on the side of what is government efficiency and government costs. What are they doing, and what might be your thoughts on someone who asked you that?
So reframe your question for me, because I'm not following the question.
Well, okay. First of all, I thank you for being here today, and I also thank you for your willingness to offer your services for the public good.
Absolutely.
But it seems to me that you can't talk about the need for additional support for services and expanded programs without thinking about those who are paying the bill, and in times of high inflation, declining markets, etc.
Sure.
There must be somebody who's asking questions along that line.
Absolutely. And the first thing that I'll say is that this didn't happen in 2020. This has been a trajectory that has been happening for some time. We did not get here overnight. But another thing that I often say is that one might look at our body of work and the set of challenges that we have to overcome in this state and think I was broke. They don't have any money. We've got resources in this state. Mind you, I'm a small business owner, and I'm looking at the fact that we've got more than $1 billion surplus right now, knowing that we need a nest egg, but more than $1 billion is more than a nest egg. We have to prioritize our resources to work towards people. I'll give you one example. I'm a small business owner, and I appreciate, the work that small business owners do for our state. In fact, small business owners provide jobs for more than 50% of the workforce. A few years ago, I love Facebook to death. I'm a millennial. I was one of the first members at Drake University to join Facebook. But when I saw a headline that said $208 million in tax credits to Facebook to create 50 jobs, to me, that's not really prioritizing who we should be prioritizing in this state. So it's less about spending more money altogether and more about prioritizing our resources in such a way that it's in line with performing for the people and nothing else at all. I'm not gonna spend all my money, I promise. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Deidre, for spending time with our club. We thank you for sharing your vision for Iowa with us, and thank you for answering our questions as well. In recognition of the precious time you've donated to us, we're giving a book in your honor to the Des Moines Public Library. Trying to do our part for education in the state. This traveling library reaches scores of readers across Des Moines since 2020. It's called the Rotary Rosie Reader Van, and was made possible by our community grant a few years ago. Okay, everybody, please consider sharing what we all agree is one of the most valuable attributes of our club, our high-quality speakers. Think about who you know who would be an outstanding addition to our club, and invite him or her to join you next time. This is by far and away, in my humble view, the simplest and most effective way to grow our club's membership, something we must always do so that we remain the force for good we have been in Des Moines. Remember, you and any guest you wish to bring need to RSVP by 9 a.m. on Wednesday, and you can do that online or directly with Kitty. Now on to what's coming. So the Beacon, this is kind of a nice extension of many of Deidre's comments today. Founded in 1980, the Beacon operates as a client-centered community living environment that supports adult women in central Iowa who've experienced trauma and systematic inequity. These social detriments of health often serve as the precursor for substance use and subsequent involvement with the criminal justice system. So, next week, please come and hear from the Beacon's leader, Melissa Vine. I think it'd be a nice cap to some of the comments that Deidre made today. On October 6th, we'll hear from Chuck Grassley, and on October 13th, his competitor in the next race, Admiral Mike Franken. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being Rotarians. We'll see you next week.